I want to tell you something. I was doing a podcast the other day with this young man named Harry Wade, who is in a very prestigious engineering program at a Canadian university, Western University. And he was actually dragged out of the classroom twice for not showing his papers and for exercising his right to have, a mask exemption. And yeah, so this is kind of where we're at, and he's been made an example out of. And there are other students who have presented with different exemptions, but most of them aren't working. And he says because he refuses to give an exemption, because he says this validates as well the whole system. Right. By saying, well, I'm exempt from needing to have these vaccinations. For him, he says, I'm not showing you my proof of vaccination. They don't know whether he's vaccinated or not. He says, I'm just not willing to play into this illiberal system. And so he's being made an example out of. And we had a very interesting discussion. He told me that in the university, in his engineering program, all they're being taught is how to debate over should we be having climate lockdowns or not, debating over indigenous culture and rights and things like this. And he's like, I'm in an engineering program. And basically, he's not really learning what it takes to become an engineer so much as what it takes to become a politically correct employee of the state down the line. This is where it's looking like it's going.
It sounds like social engineering is the program that he's in.
Yes.
Yeah, instead of physical or construction or what have you. And that's very frightening when bridges and buildings and whatnot start to fail.
Yes.
Or never were built in the first
place. Exactly the point we were thinking.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right? I mean, who do you want to be building your buildings, building your bridges and architecting the physical things around you? Do you want it to be people who can perfectly spout out the state dogma, or do you want it to be people who actually are the best at what they do? And if they're taking all of those people out, all of the innovators, right, which are out of the box thinkers, which of course are going to be the same kind of people who are not going to want to give into these illiberal mandates because they're black sheep types. Those are the innovators. And if you remove all of them from the programs, what kind of architecture will you find around you?
Brutalist, like the Soviet Union.
Yes. Is that what it's called, brutalist?
Yeah, I'm not completely up on my my architectural history, but there was a whole brutalist phase that influenced the West. There are some brutalist style buildings in the West, but it's that Soviet sort of poured concrete, very stark, no amenities sort of look. Because there was nobody creative enough left after the pogroms and purges and whatnot to design anything better.
Yeah, so we're seeing, at least in Canada, that there's indications that this is where we're going. But we always look to the United States as Canadians, I do, or any of the kind of more, liberty-loving Canadians, look at the United States as that example, as that last beacon of hope in what is becoming an increasingly global authoritarianism. And where do you think that do you think that there's still hope in the States?
I think in some states, but what we really need to do is to join all the liberty lovers together, maybe from Texas on an arc all the way up through the Great Plains and through the western provinces, and then swing over to Alaska sort of thing. Maybe hope that global warming's a thing so that we can have a port, I think it's called Churchill, on Hudson's Bay, and export all that wonderful oil from North Dakota and the oil sands region.
Alberta.
Yes. Yep. and get that all out, and have the Liberty States of America or something, right down the center, and we'll still let the coastal elites fly over, and wave to them, and I won't show the wave that I would use, but it involves a certain long digit. As they fly overhead, and be the new beacon, and then make them pay through the nose when they want to move to our part of the continent, which they will eventually do after they continue to mess up both coasts.
Well, that's what they do, right? They always end up following, like you've seen everybody messed up California, and then they all kind of want to move to Texas now because Texas is more free. So there's this big hypocritical nature in social posturing and voting based on some virtue signaling, and then saying, but I don't actually like the results of this, so I'll just kind of go and follow everybody who are migrating to the freer states, and then we'll mess that up over there. Except for in Canada, there are not many free pockets left. So this is really, really tough for us because we don't have that sheer quantity of liberty lovers as you do in the States, and people who really believe that the Constitution is the basis for their God-given protections, and freedoms that cannot be taken away by government or granted or permissed by government. We don't have as many people who think that way. And our Charter of Rights and Freedoms is not structured in the same way. We were the loyalists. We were the ones who decided to bow to the Queen at the end of the day. If you look back to hundreds of years ago, that's what actually separates the Canadian identity and the American identity. The Americans were rebels and they were freedom lovers, and they said, we don't want to be a part of this. And we, I think, are seeing the distinction that has bifurcated over, the past few centuries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think outside of Vancouver, that there's a lot of folks in BC who still love liberty. I seem to remember there were a couple of towns that were declaring themselves COVID independent and whatnot, and Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba, even the more westerly parts of Ontario, of course the Yukon and the Northwest Territories.
Yes.
And Nunavut, I think if you can credit, as I think a liberty-loving country would do, that they would commit to leaving them alone. The Inuit and so forth up there, that they would be that they would be happy to join as well. So and it's not a lot of people in those areas. That's especially what north of the Shield, do you call it? It's just it's pretty barren. But with global warming coming along, we will soon. I didn't have a drum set handy, but with global warming, coming along, it'll be the Fertile Crescent all over again.
Oh yes, the climate crisis will save us.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about climate some other time. Though, the Overton window, I guess, for climate has shifted downward. I don't see a lot of liberty stuff going on there.
No,
yeah.
And I think that the roots of political environmentalism, or even, academic environmentalism, all of those ideas were illiberal and authoritarian from the beginning.
Yep.
They are all anti-humanistic.
No matter how many times it's proven wrong, they just double down and come back. It's amazing, and it's frightening for COVID policy. I don't know if you've seen the latest South Park video, but it's it's about COVID continuing for 40 years. And it's plausible.
Nobody is going in or out. We have confirmation that one person in this community has never been vaccinated against COVID, so we must quarantine everyone.
One person? Well, who is it?
We are not allowed to say.
But if you tell us who the unvaccinated person is, we can have them vaccinated and then this will all be over.
We can't tell you who it is because in case you forgot, it's the future, and we don't single out or ridicule anyone for their personal beliefs.
Guy, hate the future.
Things are bleak, but there are, there is a window of hope in the Overton window, I hope.
That's great.
Well, Robert, I thank you so much for your time. It's always an interesting discussion with you, and I hope that we can continue to do more of these in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
You too.